The courtroom explodes in gasps as the police commissioner lunges forward, his voice cutting through the air like a weapon. He points at Judge Judy, furious, reckless, convinced his badge makes him untouchable. For half a second, it looks like power just challenged justice. Then Judge Judy slowly looks up. She does not flinch, she does not raise her voice, and in that silence, everything he thought protected him begins to collapse. The silence does not break after his outburst. It spreads. For a moment, the courtroom feels suspended in time, as if everyone is waiting to see who blinks first. The police commissioner remains standing, chest rising and falling, one hand still half raised from where he pointed moments ago. His voice has already done its damage, echoing off wood and glass, lingering like smoke after a gunshot. He does not sit. He does not apologize. He looks around the room as if daring someone to challenge him again. Across from him, Judge Judy does not move. The camera would catch her stillness first, the way her hands rest calmly on the bench, the way her eyes stay fixed, unreadable. She has seen anger before. She has seen authority weaponized. What matters now is not his volume, but his confidence, the kind that comes from believing rules bend for certain people. The bailiff shifts slightly near the wall. The audience murmurs once, then thinks better of it. Everyone senses the imbalance. This is not a normal courtroom argument. This is power testing boundaries. The commissioner clears his throat and speaks again, slower now, layered with condescension. He talks about disrespect, about being provoked, about how long he has served. Each sentence carries the same unspoken message. I am not like the people who stand here. Judge Judy lets him finish. That, more than anything, unsettles him. On the opposite side of the room sits the plaintiff, a civilian, shoulders tight, hands folded too neatly in their lap. They look smaller under the fluorescent lights, as if the weight of the badge across from them has pressed the air out of their lungs. When the commissioner glances their way, they flinch almost imperceptibly. Judge Judy notices. She always does. When she finally speaks, her voice does not rise to meet his. It cuts underneath it, calm, measured, precise. She asks him to take his seat. There is a pause. Not long, but long enough. The commissioner hesitates, then sits, the chair scraping a little louder than necessary against the floor. It sounds like resistance, or maybe embarrassment. Hard to tell yet. Judge Judy turns her attention to the plaintiff next, her tone shifting just enough to soften. She invites them to speak. Not demands. Invites. The plaintiff begins carefully, choosing words the way someone chooses steps on thin ice. They describe an encounter, a stop, a conversation that felt less like procedure and more like a warning. Their voice trembles once, then steadies. Before they can finish, the commissioner exhales sharply, shaking his head. Judge Judy's eyes lift. Just that. The room quiets instantly. She reminds him, without irritation, without sarcasm, that this is not his turn. That rank does not dictate order here. That everyone in this room answers to the same rules, regardless of uniform. The commissioner smiles. It is a short smile, a confident one. The kind worn by people who believe this moment is temporary. He leans back slightly, arms folding, as if settling in for a performance he has already rehearsed. And in that posture, relaxed, dismissive, assured, Judge Judy sees exactly what she is dealing with. She nods once. Then she asks her first question. And the laugh that escapes him afterward is just a little too loud, echoing off the walls like a challenge waiting to be answered. Confidence rushes in where caution should have stayed, and it wears a badge. The police commissioner leans forward now, elbows resting on the table as if he owns the space between himself and the bench. The earlier outburst has settled into something smoother, more practiced. This is the version of him the public usually sees, controlled, articulate, offended in a dignified way. His voice lowers, steady and deliberate, the tone of a man used to being believed. He begins to talk about service. Decades of it, long nights, dangerous streets, sacrifices no one in this room could possibly understand. He lists commendations without listing them, lets titles hang in the air without repeating them. Every word builds the same invisible wall. I am different. The camera would linger on his chest as he straightens his jacket, fingers brushing the badge pinned there. It gleams under the lights, polished, familiar, reassuring. He does not say it outright, but the implication is clear. This symbol should settle the matter. Murmurs ripple through the audience. Some nod, some look unsure. Respect is a powerful thing when it is earned. It is even more powerful when it is expected. Judge Judy listens without interruption. That silence again. The commissioner mistakes it for agreement. He pivots, gesturing toward the plaintiff with an open palm that feels anything but generous. He frames the encounter as routine, procedure, a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by someone unfamiliar with how law enforcement works. His words are calm, but the subtext is sharp. This person does not belong in my world. The plaintiff stiffens. Their hands tighten together, knuckles paling. When Judge Judy glances at them, she sees the fear resurface, not loud, not dramatic, but deeply ingrained. The kind that comes from being reminded of one's place without a single threat spoken aloud. The commissioner continues, warming to his own defense. He talks about disrespect, about being questioned, about how dangerous it is when authority is undermined. Each sentence sounds reasonable on its own. Together, they form something else entirely. Judge Judy finally shifts in her chair. It is subtle, but it changes the room. She asks him whether policy allows intimidation during a routine interaction. The commissioner blinks just once. He answers quickly, confidently, reframing the word. He says firm. He says command presence. He says control. Each substitute lands like a shield raised in front of him. Judge Judy nods slowly, writing something down. The sound of the pen is louder than it should be. She turns to the plaintiff and asks them to describe how the encounter felt. Not what happened, how it felt. The plaintiff hesitates. Their voice comes softer than before, but clearer. They describe the look, the closeness, the way options seemed to disappear as the badge came into focus. They stop themselves once, swallowing, then continue. Halfway through the sentence, the commissioner exhales sharply, shaking his head. Not loud, just dismissive. Judge Judy looks up. The room freezes again. She reminds him, gently but firmly, that reactions matter as much as actions. That authority does not erase perception. That fear does not require physical force to be real. The commissioner leans back this time, crossing his arms. The badge catches the light again, as if volunteering itself as evidence. He smiles, certain, composed, protected, for now. Judge Judy finishes her note, sets the pen down, and looks at him with quiet focus. Then she asks the plaintiff one simple question, and for the first time since he entered the room, the commissioner does not speak. The room leans forward. Something is about to slip. Judge Judy's question hangs in the air, deceptively simple. It is not about ranks or rules. It is about a moment, the kind that does not show up in reports, but lives in the body long after it ends. The plaintiff inhales slowly before answering. When they speak, their voice is steadier than before, as if naming the truth has given it weight. They describe the stop again, but this time without apology. The way the commissioner stood too close. The way his voice dropped instead of rose. The way choices narrowed until compliance felt like the only safe language left. No accusations, no drama, just memory. The commissioner shifts in his chair. Not much, just enough to signal irritation. He taps a finger once on the table, then stills it. When the plaintiff mentions the exact wording used, his jaw tightens. It is brief, almost invisible. Judge Judy catches it. She asks a follow-up question, clarifying the sequence, timing, location, who else was present. The plaintiff answers carefully, each detail placed like a stone. The story does not change, it sharpens. The commissioner interrupts. Not loudly, not rudely. He says the timeline is incorrect. That memories distort under stress. That civilians often misunderstand tone. His voice is smooth again, authoritative, almost instructional. as if correcting a child. Judge Judy does not look at him. She looks down at her notes, then back up at the plaintiff and asks them to continue. That is when the first real crack appears. The plaintiff mentions a comment, a casual remark that landed heavy. Something about making things harder if cooperation did not improve. The words are repeated exactly as remembered. The room reacts this time. A murmur escapes before it can be stopped. The commissioner laughs softly. A breath of sound, more disbelief than humor. He shakes his head and says that never happened. Too fast. Judge Judy lifts her eyes. Her expression does not change, but the temperature in the room does. She asks him how he remembers the interaction. Not whether it happened, how he remembers it. He hesitates, just for a second. Then he answers with certainty, listing procedure again, emphasizing professionalism, but something in his rhythm is off. The sentences come quicker now, overlapping slightly, as if outrunning a thought he does not want to sit with. Judge Judy asks him if any documentation was filed afterward. He nods. Of course there was. Standard protocol. She asks if it includes verbatim remarks. He says no, it never does. She asks if there were any calls made after the encounter. His answer comes immediately. No. The plaintiff looks down, then back up, summoning something difficult. They say there was a call, that they remember the time because they were shaking when they looked at their phone, that the voice on the other end was calm, almost friendly, but the message was clear. The commissioner leans forward sharply now. He says this is speculation, that this is turning into character assassination. His badge flashes under the lights as he moves, drawing the eye like a reflex. Judge Judy raises one finger, not to silence him, to pause him. She asks the bailiff to bring the case file closer. Paper rustles. The sound feels loud in the quiet. Judge Judy opens the folder slowly, scanning a page with deliberate calm. She does not look surprised. She does not look concerned. She looks confirmed. Then she looks up at the commissioner and asks him to explain why a call log appears where he said none existed, and the uniform that once looked so solid suddenly feels thinner, stretched tight over something beginning to give. Paper makes a sound when it lands. It always does. Judge Judy does not raise the document. She does not announce it. She simply turns one page inside the open folder, the motion unhurried, almost gentle. The courtroom leans in without realizing it, drawn by the gravity of her calm. The police commissioner watches her hands now, not her face. His earlier certainty has narrowed into focus, like someone tracking a threat they do not want to name. She asks him again, evenly, about the call. Not whether it happened, not why it happened, just when. He clears his throat and answers with confidence that sounds practiced. He gives a window of time, broad enough to feel safe. He says he remembers because he remembers everything important. The badge on his chest catches the light as he sits straighter, reinforcing the story with posture. Judge Judy nods. Then she slides the folder forward, turning it so the commissioner can see. The page shows a timestamp, not a range, a minute. The shift is immediate, though subtle. His eyes flick down, then back up, then down again. It is the smallest hesitation, the kind most people would miss, but hesitation is loud in a courtroom built on precision. He says the log must be incorrect. Judge Judy does not respond to that. Instead, she asks the bailiff to confirm the source of the document. The answer comes quick and professional. Internal records, standard formatting, verified. The plaintiff's breath catches audibly. They do not speak, but their shoulders loosen for the first time since they walked in. Validation does that. It arrives quietly, then spreads. The commissioner shifts again, this time less controlled. He says logs can be misleading, that calls can be misattributed, that this is being blown out of proportion. His words stack faster now, less measured, as if speed might rebuild the wall that just cracked. Judge Judy lets him talk. When he finishes, she asks a single question that lands like weight. Why did you say no call existed at all? The room stills. The commissioner opens his mouth, then closes it. He smiles briefly, an instinct more than a decision, then adjusts course. He says he misspoke, that it was an oversight, that the call was insignificant, a courtesy follow-up, nothing more. Judge Judy looks back down at the file. She reads silently for several seconds. Those seconds stretch. Then she looks up, meeting his eyes directly now. The calm in her expression is not neutral anymore. It is focused, intentional. She explains, for the room, not just for him, that oversight and omission are not the same thing. That forgetting is human. Denial is deliberate. The commissioner shakes his head, louder this time. He insists his integrity is being questioned unfairly, that his career speaks for itself, that this court is losing perspective. Judge Judy does not interrupt. When he finishes, she closes the folder. The sound is final, not dramatic, definitive. She tells him there is more in the file. Not just the log, not just the call. Context, pattern, timing. She tells him the court will get to it. Not yet. The commissioner swallows. It is visible now. For the first time, the badge on his chest feels less like armor and more like an exhibit waiting its turn. Judge Judy rests her hands on the bench and delivers the line that changes everything. This record does not contradict you by accident. Silence floods the room, and in that silence, the first truth settles. This case is no longer about a misunderstanding. It is about what happens when power forgets it is being watched. He adjusts his jacket. The habit comes before the thought. The police commissioner shifts again in his chair, smoothing the front of his uniform as if straightening fabric might realign the moment. The badge flashes once under the lights, not proudly now, but reflexively. His breathing is measured, controlled, but something underneath it has changed. The certainty that carried him into this room has begun to thin, stretched too far by facts that refuse to bend. He leans forward, voice firm, reclaiming what he believes is slipping away. He says this is becoming personal, that he feels attacked, that his years of service are being reduced to a technicality, a misinterpretation, a hostile narrative. He frames himself as the one under scrutiny, the one being wronged by a system too eager to question its protectors. The words sound strong, the tone does not. Judge Judy listens without reaction, her expression neutral, her posture unchanged. She does not respond to the defensiveness. She responds to the logic beneath it. She reminds him, calmly, almost conversationally, that authority does not come with immunity. That responsibility scales with power, that the higher the rank, the clearer the expectations. The commissioner interrupts, sharper now. He insists this is exactly the problem, that people no longer understand command. That hesitation invites chaos. That fear is sometimes necessary. The room reacts before the judge does. A ripple of discomfort moves through the audience. The plaintiff's head lifts slightly, eyes fixed on him now, not afraid, just alert, listening. Judge Judy waits for him to finish. Then she speaks. She says fear may produce compliance, but it never produces trust. And trust, she adds, is the only thing that makes authority legitimate. The commissioner scoffs. It is brief, instinctive. He says she is overanalyzing, that this is theory, not the street, that decisions have to be made quickly, that people who hesitate get hurt. Judge Judy asks him whether he believes intimidation and efficiency are the same thing. He answers too quickly. Yes, sometimes. The pen in Judge Judy's hand stops moving. She looks up. She tells him that intimidation does not prevent harm. It displaces it. That when power is used to silence, it does not disappear. It transfers, downward, onto people with fewer options. The commissioner shifts again, this time rubbing his thumb against the edge of the table. A nervous motion, subtle but new. He says he is being painted as something he is not. That his intent was never malicious. Judge Judy nods. She says intent does not erase impact. The plaintiff exhales quietly. It is not relief yet, but it is recognition. Judge Judy turns to them and asks a follow-up about the aftermath. about what happened after the encounter ended, about whether the sense of pressure lingered. Before the plaintiff can answer, the commissioner cuts in again, louder this time, insisting there was no follow-up, no retaliation, no further contact. His voice echoes. Judge Judy raises her hand. Just once. She tells him they will get to that. That patience is not optional here. That control, in this room, belongs to the truth, not to the loudest voice. The commissioner leans back hard, folding his arms. His jaw tightens. The badge on his chest tilts slightly, no longer centered. Judge Judy glances down at the file again, flipping past the page already discussed. She pauses at another section, one she has not mentioned yet. She looks up at him, eyes steady. Then she asks, almost casually, about a second incident. Not the one already discussed. Another one. And the way his expression changes tells the entire courtroom that this case just moved somewhere he did not expect to go. His answer comes too fast, too rehearsed. The question about the second incident still hangs in the air when the police commissioner speaks again, cutting into the silence before it can settle. He says there was no second incident, no follow-up, no pattern. His voice is firm, clipped, almost sharp, the kind of certainty that feels less like memory and more like defense. Judge Judy does not respond immediately. She lets the words sit there, exposed. The commissioner continues anyway, filling the space. He says people exaggerate, that emotions blur facts, that one interaction should not be twisted into a narrative. The sentences pile on top of each other now, losing the smooth spacing he had earlier. He is explaining too much, correcting things no one has accused him of yet. The camera would catch his hands, fingers tapping, then stopping, then pressing flat against the table as if grounding himself. This is new. Earlier, his hands were expressive, commanding. Now they are busy. Judge Judy finally looks down at the file again. She does not open it. She simply rests her hand on it. That gesture quiets the room more effectively than a gavel ever could. She tells him she is not interested in exaggeration. She is interested in consistency. She explains that power leaves patterns, the same way pressure leaves fingerprints, not dramatic ones, repetitive ones. The commissioner scoffs, but the sound lacks confidence. He says this is speculation, that there is no evidence of a second incident, that he cannot be held responsible for how people feel. Judge Judy lifts her eyes. She asks him if he remembers speaking to anyone else connected to the plaintiff within 48 hours of the encounter. He pauses, just a beat. Then he says no. Too quickly again. Judge Judy nods, as if expecting that answer. She signals to the clerk, who stands and confirms that an additional statement exists, not from the plaintiff, but from someone else. A third party, a brief interaction, nothing dramatic, just enough to matter. The commissioner's posture stiffens. His shoulders rise slightly, like someone bracing for impact they cannot see yet. He asks what the statement says, his voice edging toward irritation. Judge Judy tells him they will hear it shortly. Not yet, she explains, for the benefit of the room, that intimidation rarely announces itself, that it works best when it feels deniable, when it can hide behind professionalism and plausible explanations. The plaintiff watches intently now, eyes fixed on the bench. Their fear has shifted into something steadier. Hope, perhaps, or simply relief that the truth is no longer theirs to carry alone. The commissioner shakes his head, louder this time. He says this is turning into a witch hunt, that his name is being dragged through implication instead of fact. He gestures broadly, the badge catching the light again, but this time it does not command attention. It begs for it. Judge Judy lets the moment breathe. Then she speaks quietly. She tells him that when authority feels cornered, it often reveals itself, not through actions, but through urgency, through the need to control the narrative before facts do. The commissioner opens his mouth to respond, stops, closes it again, closes. The mask has slipped now. Not completely, but enough. Judge Judy turns to the clerk and gives a small nod. Prepare the audio, she says. The room goes still, because everyone understands what that means, and whatever he thought was buried is about to speak for itself. The room grows painfully quiet. Silence sharpens everything. Judge Judy does not rush the moment. The clerk's hand hovers near the controls, waiting, but the judge raises her fingers slightly. Not yet. She wants the wait to settle first. She wants everyone to understand that what comes next is not spectacle, it is consequence. The police commissioner sits rigid now, shoulders squared, chin lifted. The badge on his chest still gleams, but it no longer commands the room. It feels exposed, a symbol stripped of its protection. He clears his throat once, then stills himself, as if movement itself might betray him. Judge Judy speaks slowly, deliberately, framing the moment before it unfolds. She explains that patterns matter more than volume, that authority does not fail in one dramatic act. It erodes through repetition, through moments small enough to deny but consistent enough to harm. Her words are not accusatory, they are diagnostic. The plaintiff watches without blinking. Judge Judy nods to the clerk. The audio begins. At first it is unremarkable, a greeting, a pause, then the commissioner's voice, calm, familiar, unmistakable. The tone is friendly on the surface, almost casual, but beneath it, something harder presses through. A suggestion, a reminder, a warning disguised as concern. He speaks about cooperation, about making things easier, about how problems have a way of multiplying when people push too hard. The courtroom reacts in fragments, a sharp inhale here, a muffled gasp there. The plaintiff's hands tremble as the words replay something they thought only they had heard. Judge Judy watches the commissioner now, not the screen. His jaw tightens, his eyes fix forward. He does not look at the plaintiff. He does not look at the bench. He stares at nothing, as if refusing to give the moment a place to land. The audio ends. The silence afterward is heavier than before. Judge Judy allows it. Silence is honest. It leaves nowhere to hide. She asks him if that is his voice. He nods. She asks him whether he considers the call a courtesy. He hesitates, then says yes. She asks whether he believes courtesy includes pressure. He does not answer immediately. When he finally speaks, the certainty is gone. He says it was misinterpreted, that his intent was supportive. That tone can be misunderstood without context. Judge Judy responds evenly. Context is exactly what reveals meaning. She explains that when authority speaks, it does not need to threaten to be intimidating. That implication carries more force than volume ever could, and that the badge does not soften that force, it amplifies it. The commissioner shifts again, but this time there is nowhere left to settle. His movements feel smaller now, contained. Judge Judy leans forward slightly, her voice steady. She tells him that in this courtroom, the badge does not grant protection. It demands accountability. That service is not a shield. It is a standard. The plaintiff exhales, shoulders dropping. Not in triumph, in relief. Judge Judy glances down at the file one last time, then back up. She says there is one more question before they proceed. One that will determine how this court moves forward, and the way she says it makes clear, whatever answer he gives next, the badge will not save him from it. The question lands softly. That is what makes it dangerous. Judge Judy does not raise her voice when she asks it. She does not even change her posture. She simply looks at the police commissioner and asks whether he contacted anyone else connected to the plaintiff after that call. Supervisors, colleagues, or intermediaries, anyone who could smooth things over. The phrasing is careful, precise. The commissioner exhales through his nose and shakes his head. No, absolutely not. He says the call was the end of it, a courtesy, nothing more. He repeats the word like a shield, hoping repetition might turn it into truth. Judge Judy nods once. Then she waits. The pause stretches just long enough to become uncomfortable. The clerk glances up, the bailiff shifts his weight. The audience holds its breath without realizing it. Silence is doing its work again, pulling tension tight, waiting for something to snap. Judge Judy looks down at the file and turns a page. This time she does not slide it forward, she keeps it where it is. She tells the commissioner she asked the question because timing matters, because patterns do not just exist in actions but in reactions, and because people who believe they are untouchable tend to forget how many systems quietly watch them. The commissioner stiffens. She continues, explaining that before this hearing, the court requested routine background context, not an investigation. Context, internal conduct summaries, communication logs, oversight reviews, standard procedure when authority is part of the dispute. The commissioner's confidence wavers just slightly. Judge Judy tells him that during that process, something unusual surfaced. Not about this plaintiff specifically, at first, something broader, something that did not belong to this case until he made it belong. She looks up now, eyes steady. She says his name appears more than once, not in complaints, in follow-ups. She explains that multiple civilians, unrelated to each other, described similar post-encounter contact, similar language, similar courtesy calls. Always calm, always deniable, always arriving after someone questioned his authority. The room reacts audibly this time. The commissioner shakes his head hard, louder than before. He says this is outrageous, that patterns can be fabricated, that this is character assassination disguised as concern. Judge Judy does not argue. She simply states that she did not discover this information today. She discovered it weeks ago, and she did not bring it into this courtroom until he denied it. That is when the shift becomes undeniable. The commissioner leans back slowly, as if gravity has changed. His mouth opens, searching for words that no longer arrive on command. The badge on his chest feels heavier now, less like an emblem and more like a weight pulling him down. Judge Judy explains, for the room, that authority does not collapse all at once. It collapses the moment truth no longer needs permission to speak. She tells him this court is not reacting. It is responding. And then she delivers the line that flips everything. This is no longer about whether you intimidated one person. She pauses. It is about whether you normalized it. The silence that follows is absolute. The commissioner swallows, eyes darting briefly toward the exit, then back to the bench. Control has fully left his hands now. He is no longer steering the moment, he is inside it. Judge Judy leans forward slightly. Her voice is quiet, certain. This court will now proceed accordingly. And in that instant, everyone understands. Whatever protection his position once offered is gone. Power has shifted, and the real reckoning is just beginning. The courtroom feels smaller now, like the walls have learned something. Judge Judy does not rush forward after her last line. She lets the shift breathe. Power, once exposed, needs space to reveal what it leaves behind. The police commissioner sits quieter than before, hands folded tightly, posture rigid, not authoritative, but contained. His badge is still visible, still polished, but it no longer speaks for him. It waits. Judge Judy begins again, not with accusation, but with framing. She explains that authority is not neutral in disputes like this. That when someone carries power into an interaction, their presence becomes part of the evidence, whether they intend it or not. That words land differently when they come backed by enforcement, history, and consequence. The commissioner stares straight ahead. He does not interrupt now. Judge Judy references the additional context uncovered before the hearing. Oversight notes, internal summaries, nothing disciplinary on their own. But together, they form a pattern, a shape. She emphasizes that the court did not seek them to punish him. It sought them to understand him. The plaintiff listens, stunned. Their original complaint suddenly feels small compared to the scope of what is unfolding. Not minimized, contextualized. Judge Judy explains that when authority is questioned, the response matters more than the original action. That people who wield power reveal their relationship with it not when things go right, but when they are challenged. The way they close ranks, the way they follow up, the way they remind others who they are. The commissioner finally looks up. He says, this is unfair, that he is being judged for perception, not conduct. that leadership requires firmness, and firmness is often mistaken for threat by people unwilling to accept accountability. His voice is controlled, but tired now. The sharp edges have dulled. Judge Judy acknowledges the distinction, then dismantles the defense calmly. She says, perception becomes evidence when it is consistent, when it repeats across unrelated experiences, when different people describe the same pressure without ever meeting each other. She reminds the room that courts exist precisely because power cannot be trusted to assess itself. The commissioner swallows. Judge Judy leans forward slightly, hands resting flat on the bench. She explains that this case is no longer evaluating whether he violated a rule in isolation. It is examining whether his authority changed outcomes simply by being applied. The plaintiff's eyes fill, not with tears, but with something steadier: recognition. For the first time, the harm they felt is being described accurately, without exaggeration or dismissal. Judge Judy states it plainly. When authority creates fear, that fear becomes part of the record. The commissioner shifts, shoulders slumping just a fraction. He is listening now, not preparing a response, not calculating advantage, just listening. Judge Judy looks down at her notes one last time, then back at him. She says the court will move forward not by questioning his title, but by weighing its impact. And in that sentence, the transformation completes. Authority is no longer his defense, it is the evidence. If power changes how truth is heard, should it ever be allowed to speak without scrutiny? For the first time, he hesitates, and the room notices. The police commissioner inhales, slow and deliberate, as if measuring whether words are still safe. When he speaks, the edge is gone. What remains is something quieter, not humility, not yet, but fatigue, the kind that comes from holding a posture too long. He says he never meant for any of this to happen. Not the fear, not the perception, not the fallout. His voice carries less authority now and more explanation. He talks about pressure, the weight of leadership, the constant scrutiny, the expectation to always be in control. He says decisions are made fast, that mistakes happen, that intent should matter. Judge Judy listens, not indulgently, not dismissively, attentively. She does not interrupt as he continues, his sentences loosening, becoming more personal. He mentions the job changing him, the vigilance, the isolation, the way respect feels conditional when you reach a certain level. Given publicly, questioned privately. The badge no longer leads the conversation, the man does. Judge Judy asks him a question that reframes everything. Whether he remembers the moment he stopped seeing civilians as individuals and started seeing them as variables. The commissioner blinks. He looks down at the table, eyes unfocused, searching memory not for facts, but for feeling. When he answers, it is slower. He admits he does not know when that shift happened, only that it felt necessary at the time. Efficient. Protective. Judge Judy nods slightly. She tells him efficiency without empathy always costs more than it saves. That control built on fear is unstable, and that authority, when stripped of accountability, eventually becomes about preservation, not service. The plaintiff watches quietly, no longer shrinking. Their posture is upright now, grounded. This is not vindication, it is clarity. The commissioner swallows. His shoulders drop a fraction, as if something heavy has finally been set down. He admits he was trying to prevent complaints, that he believed early intervention avoided larger problems, that he thought a firm reminder of how things work would resolve tension before it escalated. Judge Judy's voice remains calm. She asks him why fear felt like a solution. The question lands deeper than accusation ever could. He struggles to answer. When he does, the truth slips out unguarded, because fear works, because compliance is easier than trust, because trust requires patience, and patience feels risky when power is always being challenged. The courtroom absorbs that. Judge Judy leans forward slightly, her tone soft but unwavering. She tells him that fear works in the short term, but it corrodes everything it touches: credibility, legitimacy, and eventually the person who relies on it. The commissioner nods once. not in agreement, in recognition. Judge Judy pauses, allowing the moment to settle. Then she asks the question that strips the badge of its final protection. Did you ever ask yourself whether control mattered more to you than justice? The commissioner opens his mouth to respond, stops. And for the first time since this case began, silence is not imposed on him. It is chosen. His voice drops, not from fear, from recognition. The silence he chose a moment ago stretches, thick and deliberate. Judge Judy does not interrupt it. She understands what is happening now. This is not a legal unraveling, it is a human one. The police commissioner finally speaks, and when he does, the words come slower, less guarded, less rehearsed. He says he never saw himself as someone who abused power. He says that matters to him, that he believed he was protecting the institution, not himself. Judge Judy listens without comment. He continues, eyes fixed somewhere past the bench, past the room. He talks about optics, about headlines, about how one complaint can spiral into a narrative that never lets go. He says he learned early that controlling the story was part of the job, that silence invites suspicion, that authority must look unshakable, even when it is. The plaintiff feels the shift before anyone else does. This is not defense anymore. This is confession without intention. Judge Judy asks him when image became more important than impact. He exhales, long and unsteady. He admits that after a few early incidents, misunderstandings, complaints that went nowhere, he stopped thinking about whether he was right and started thinking about whether he looked right. He says he told himself that firm reminders were preventative, that if people felt watched, they would behave. That order would maintain itself. The room is still. He says the calls were never meant to threaten. They were meant to correct, to quietly reinforce boundaries before they reached daylight, before anyone else could reinterpret them. Judge Judy's eyes sharpen, not with anger, but with clarity. She asks him whether he understands what that means. He nods, and then he says the thing he never meant to say out loud. He says he believed fear was acceptable if it protected the institution. That discomfort was a small price compared to scandal. That individual harm was manageable if it prevented collective scrutiny. The words land like weight. The plaintiff's breath catches, not because they are shocked, but because the doubt they carried for so long has finally been erased. This was never imagined, never exaggerated, never personal. It was procedural. Judge Judy does not speak immediately. When she does, her voice is lower than before, steadier. She tells him that the moment authority justifies harm in the name of preservation, it stops being justice. That institutions do not survive by silencing fear. They survive by answering it. She tells him this case was never about a misunderstanding. It was about normalization, about how easily power convinces itself that control is care. The commissioner's shoulders slump fully now. There is no posture left to maintain, no role to perform. Judge Judy delivers the line that reframes everything that came before. This was never justice. A pause. This was fear wearing authority. The courtroom does not react, it absorbs, and in that stillness, the final truth settles, not just about what he did, but about who he became while doing it. The badge on his chest does not gleam anymore. It feels heavy, and everyone understands that whatever comes next will not be about punishment alone, but about reckoning with a truth that can no longer be unsaid. No one speaks. Even silence feels careful now. The truth does not echo when it lands. It settles. The police commissioner remains seated, shoulders lowered, hands resting flat on the table as if movement itself might feel dishonest. The confidence that once filled the space around him has drained away, leaving something smaller behind. Not shame exactly, but exposure. The kind that comes when there is nothing left to defend. Judge Judy allows the stillness to hold. She does not rush to consequence. She understands that collapse needs room. That reckoning, if it is going to mean anything, must be felt before it is measured. The plaintiff sits quietly, eyes forward, breathing slow and controlled. Their face carries no triumph. What shows instead is exhaustion, the release that comes when a truth carried alone is finally acknowledged aloud. The burden has shifted. It is no longer theirs. Judge Judy speaks at last, her voice softer than before, but no less firm. She tells the courtroom that moments like this are not victories. They are warnings. That when authority loses its anchor, everyone feels the drift, especially those without power to correct it. The commissioner nods once. He does not argue. He does not interrupt. The posture of resistance is gone. What remains is listening, the most difficult position for someone who once controlled every room they entered. Judge Judy explains the difference between accountability and punishment. That punishment seeks retribution. Accountability seeks correction. That the goal of this court is not to humiliate, but to restore balance where it was lost. The words are measured, intentional. She addresses the harm plainly. The fear caused, the pressure applied, the trust eroded. She does not dramatize it, she does not soften it. Truth, she knows, needs neither. The commissioner's jaw tightens once, then relaxes. His eyes glisten briefly, not with tears, but with the recognition that something irreversible has occurred. Not the loss of a case, the loss of an illusion. That authority could be wielded without consequence. That intention alone could absolve impact. Judge Judy turns briefly to the plaintiff and acknowledges their courage, not for speaking loudly, but for speaking consistently, for trusting the process even when it did not feel designed for them. The plaintiff nods, swallowing hard, dignity intact. The courtroom remains quiet. No murmurs, no whispers, no need. Judge Judy looks back at the commissioner, her gaze steady, almost compassionate, but uncompromising. She tells him that what happens next will extend beyond this room. That transparency does not end at the bench. That accountability does not disappear once words are spoken. The commissioner straightens slightly, not in defiance but in acceptance. Judge Judy closes the file, not sharply, not dramatically, just enough to signal that reflection has ended. She draws a breath. Then she says she is ready to outline the consequences. And in that moment, heavy, deliberate, unavoidable, everyone understands that collapse was only the beginning. What comes next will define what remains. Justice does not raise its voice, it clarifies. Judge Judy does not lean forward when she begins. She does not tighten her tone or sharpen her words. She speaks as if the most difficult part has already passed, because it has. What remains now is not confrontation, but responsibility. She outlines the court's findings with careful precision. Not theatrically, not emotionally. Each sentence is measured, deliberate, impossible to misinterpret. She states that the commissioner's conduct crossed the line from authority into intimidation, that the pattern of follow-up contact, when viewed in context, constituted misuse of position. That intent, while noted, does not outweigh impact. The police commissioner listens without interruption. No scoffs, no rebuttals, no posture. Judge Judy explains the consequences clearly. Formal findings entered into the record. Referral to independent oversight for further review. Mandatory leadership and ethics evaluation. Documentation forwarded to appropriate supervisory bodies, not as retaliation, but as transparency. She pauses briefly, letting the words register. These are not punishments designed to humiliate. They are measures designed to correct, to ensure oversight where discretion once operated unchecked. She addresses the room, not just the commissioner, and explains why this matters. Because unchecked authority does not just harm individuals, it reshapes culture, it teaches silence, it teaches fear, and fear, she reminds them, is never neutral. The commissioner nods once, slowly. Judge Judy turns to the plaintiff. Her voice softens just enough to acknowledge humanity without sacrificing formality. She recognizes the harm they endured, the uncertainty, the doubt, the isolation that follows when power is misused quietly. She states plainly that their experience was real, valid, and wrongfully dismissed until now. The plaintiff's eyes glisten. They do not cry. They straighten. Dignity restored does not need spectacle. Judge Judy then returns her attention to the commissioner. She tells him that these consequences are not the end of accountability, they are the beginning of it. That authority survives only when it submits to the same scrutiny it demands of others. That leadership is not proven by control, but by restraint. The commissioner exhales slowly, his shoulders relax, not in relief, but in acceptance. This is no longer about winning. It never was. Judge Judy closes her notes and rests her hands on the bench. She tells him something quietly, something not written into any order, that this court did not set out to break him, that truth did that on its own, and that what he does next will matter more than what happened here today. The courtroom remains silent, not tense, not celebratory, resolved. Judge Judy pauses, eyes moving once more through the room, the plaintiff, the commissioner, the audience, and then she prepares to conclude. But before the gavel falls, she holds the moment a second longer, because consequences, when delivered without cruelty, are meant to teach, and everyone in that room is still learning. The gavel remains untouched. Silence takes its place. Judge Judy does not end the session immediately. She knows better. Verdicts close cases, but silence reveals meaning. The courtroom waits, suspended in a calm that feels heavier than tension ever did. No one shifts, no one whispers. Even the cameras seem reluctant to move. The police commissioner sits still, eyes lowered now, no longer scanning the room for leverage or allies. The posture of command has left him completely. What remains is awareness, the kind that arrives only after defenses are stripped away. He is not defeated in the theatrical sense, he is corrected. Judge Judy speaks again, but not to him alone. She addresses the courtroom as a whole, the audience, the clerks, the bailiff, the unseen viewers who will later dissect every second of what happened here. Her voice is steady, reflective, almost instructional. She says moments like this are rarely remembered for what was said loudly, but for what was finally heard. She talks about patterns, how they begin unnoticed, protected by good intentions and bad habits. How authority, left unexamined, slowly stops asking whether it is serving justice or merely protecting itself. Her words are not abstract, they are grounded in decades of watching power rise, wobble, and fall. The commissioner lifts his gaze briefly, not defensively, not pleading, just listening. Judge Judy tells them that silence is often where learning begins, that when excuses stop working, reflection becomes unavoidable. That real accountability is quiet. It does not announce itself or demand forgiveness. It changes behavior when no one is watching. Oh. The plaintiff stands now, slowly, as if testing new ground. Their shoulders are back. Their voice, when they speak, is calm. They do not ask for more. They do not revisit harm. They simply thank the court for hearing what was once dismissed. Judge Judy nods. Nothing more is needed. The commissioner watches as the plaintiff sits back down, dignity intact. The contrast is not lost on him. Power once stood where humility stands now, and the exchange is unmistakable. Judge Judy looks back at him one final time before conclusion. Her expression carries no judgment left to give, only expectation. She tells him that the absence of cruelty today was intentional, that consequences delivered without humiliation leave room for growth, but only if the person receiving them chooses honesty over pride. The commissioner nods once. This time, the movement is not reflex, it is deliberate. Judge Judy rests her hand on the gavel, but does not strike it yet. She allows one final stretch of quiet, a pause long enough for the lesson to sink in, long enough for everyone present to understand that justice is not always loud. Sometimes it teaches by standing still. Before the verdict closes this case, ask yourself, does accountability exist to punish power or to remind it what it is for? The sound, when it comes, is softer than expected. Final, but not loud. Judge Judy lifts the gavel at last. There is no flourish in the motion, no dramatic pause meant to draw attention. She brings it down with controlled certainty, the wood meeting wood in a sound that feels less like judgment and more like closure. The echo is brief. The meaning is not. The case is concluded. Not ended. Concluded. The police commissioner does not flinch. He does not look up immediately. He sits with the result, shoulders squared but relaxed now, as if resistance has finally exhausted itself. The badge on his chest remains where it has always been, but it no longer defines the moment. It no longer defines him. Judge Judy speaks one final time, her voice steady, reflective, and unmistakably calm. She reminds the room that justice is not measured by volume or spectacle, that it does not require humiliation to be effective, and that accountability, when done correctly, does not destroy. It clarifies. She says authority was never meant to stand above scrutiny, it was meant to survive it. The plaintiff rises as the judge finishes, gathering their papers slowly. There is no rush now, no fear of interruption. They move with quiet confidence, the kind that comes not from winning, but from being seen. From knowing the truth was heard and affirmed without condition. Judge Judy acknowledges them with a nod, not ceremonial, but human. The commissioner stands last. For a moment he hesitates, eyes drifting toward the bench one final time. Not in defiance, not in appeal, in understanding. He nods once, subtly, as if marking a line he cannot cross again without consequence. Judge Judy watches him go. She has seen this moment before, the instant when power finally recognizes its limits, when control gives way to responsibility, when silence replaces certainty. The courtroom begins to empty, footsteps soft against the floor, conversations subdued. No one lingers for drama. There is none left to extract. What remains is the quiet residue of a lesson learned publicly, but meant to echo privately. Judge Judy gathers her files, pausing briefly as she closes the folder on this case. She does not smile. She does not sigh. She simply rests her hand on the cover, as if acknowledging the weight of what passed through it. Then she looks out over the room one last time, and the final truth settles, not spoken, but understood. Power does not collapse when it is questioned. It collapses when it refuses to answer. Justice does not demand obedience. It demands accountability. And today, power answered.